Good evening, everyone. We are presenting our topic, art history. At kasama ko rito ay si AIZA DIAZ, JEROME LICUNAN, Dharev Manalo, JETT MAGALLANES, Lawrence CATARONGAN, FLORES, Diana Rose LAUZON. Next slide, please. Renaissance. The Renaissance was a fervent period of European cultural, artistic, political, and economic rebirth. Following the Middle Ages, generally described as taking place from the 14th century to the 17th century. The Renaissance promoted the discovery of classical philosophy, literature, and art. Some of the greatest thinkers, authors, statements, scientists, and artists in human history thrived during this era. While global exploration opened up new lands and cultures to European commerce, the Renaissance is credited with bridging the gap between the Middle Age and modern day civilization. Next, please. Leonardo Piero de Da Vinci was an Italian polymath of the Renaissance who was active as a painter, draftsman, engineer, scientist, theorist, sculptor, and architect. Leonardo da Vinci was born April 15, 1452 at Arciano, Italy. Died on May 2, 1519. And influenced by Andrea del Verrocchio, Lorenzo di Medici, and John Agripolos, Leonardo inspired by the comparison of people, animal, and environment. Renaissance humanism and guiding idea of Leonardo times value human dignity and education, while seeking humanity's natural place within the universe because he loved the world as deeply as studied it. When Da Vinci was 24 years old, he was arrested along with several male companions on charges of sodomy. So when no witness came forward to testify against the artist and his friends, the charges were dropped, but the Da Vinci Journal suggested that the allegations were somewhat devastating to the man who liked to keep his private life. Da Vinci also has been scared for his life. In 15th century, Florence sodomy was a crime punishable by death. Next slide, please. Michelangelo di Lodovico Buonarroti Simoni. Known simply as Michelangelo, was an Italian sculptor, painter, architect, and part of the High Renaissance. Michelangelo was born March 6, 1475 at Capri's, Michelangelo, Italy, and died on February 18, 1564. He is also known for being a proponent of individualism, humanism, and secularism in his sculptures and works depicting religious scene in Michelangelo's. Painting can convey both pain and joy in equal measures. And Michelangelo is arguably of the greatest artist of all times. He could create vast architectures, monuments such as the square in front of the St. Peter Basilica in Rome. He could paint gorgeously, and his sculptures are some of the most perfect ever created. Next slide po. Raffaello Sanzio da Urbino, known as mostly as Raphael, was Italian painter and architect of the High Renaissance. His work is admired for its clarity of form is of comparison and visual achievement of the Neoplatonic ideal of human grandeur.
Mga naman, may gagawin ako dito.
Raffaello was the son of Giovanni Santi and Magia di Battista Ciala. His mother died in 1491 and his father was, according to the 16th century artist and biographer Giorgio Vasari, a painter of no great merit. He was, however, a man of culture who was in constant contract with the advanced artistic ideas current at the court of Urbino. He gave his son his first instruction in painting, and before his death in 1494, when Raphael was 11, he had introduced the boy to humanistic philosophy at the court. Next slide po. Rembrandt Harmensoen van Rijn, usually simply known as Rembrandt, was a Dutch Golden Age painter, printmaker and draughtsman, and innovative and prolific master in three media. He is generally considered one of the greatest visual artists in the history of art and the most important in Dutch art history. Rembrandt is full Rembrandt Harmensoen van Rijn. Rembrandt original spelled Rembrandt. Born on July 15, 1606. Leiden, Netherlands, and died on October 4, 1669. Dutch Baroque painter and printmaker, one of the greatest storytellers in the history of art, possessing an exceptional ability to render people in their various moods and dramatic pieces. Rembrandt is also known as the painter of light and shade, and as an artist who favored an uncompromising realism that would lead some critics to claim that he preferred ugliness to beauty. Next slide po. Alessandro di Mariano di Bani Felipe, known as Sandro Botticelli, was an Italian painter of the early Renaissance. Botticelli's posthumous reputation suffered until the late 19th century, when he was discovered by the pre-Raphaelite who stimulates a reappraisal of his work. Sandro Botticelli, original name Alessandro di Mariano Felipe, born on 1445, Florence at Italy. Died May 17, 1510, Florence. One of the greatest painter of the Florentine Renaissance. His birth was Venus and Primavera are often said to epitomize for modern viewers the spirit of Renaissance. Next po. Donato di Niccolo di Bettobardi, better known as Donatello, was a Florentine sculptor of the Renaissance period. Born on Florence, he studied classical sculpture and used this to develop a complete Renaissance style in sculpture. Donatello, full name, Donatello was an Italian Renaissance artist best known for his sculptures such as striking bronze figures of David now in the Bargello Museum of his native Florence. Donatello was influential in popularizing the classicizing style where Renaissance artists look to the survival works of antiquity for inspiration. The sculptor was particularly interested in giving his art a sense of perspective. Other works by Donatello which influenced later artists include this marble Saint Mark or San Michele in Florence. The shallow bronze relief panels for both the Baptistery of Sina and the altar of San Antonio Basilica in Padua and the Gatamelata Equestrian statue in Padua. Next po.
Impressionism is 19th century art movement characterized by relatively small, thin, yet visible brush stroke, open composition on accurate depiction of light in its changing qualities, often accentuating the effect of the passage of time. Ordinary subject matter, usually unusual visual angel, and inclusion of movement as a crucial element of human perception and experience. Impressionism originated with a group of Paris-based artists whose independent exhibitions brought them to the prominence during the 1870s and 1880s. Next, Oscar Claude Monet was a French painter and founder of Impressionism painting who is seen as a key precursor to modernism, especially in his attempt to paint nature as he pervaded it. During his long career, he was the most consistent and prolific practitioner of Impressionism philosophy, of expressing one's perceptions before nature, especially as applied to plein air outdoor landscape painting. The term Impressionism is derived from the title of his painting Impression Solely Levant exhibit in the 1874 exhibition of projects, entitled by Monet and his associated as an alternative to the Salon. He used in his art is Monet worked primarily in oil paint, but he also used pastel and carry a sketchbook. He used quite a limited range of colors in his painting, varnish, brown, and earth colors from his palette. By 1886, black had also disappeared. Next, Camille Pissarro. Pissarro ba? Pissarro was a Danish French impressionist and neo-impressionist painter born on the island of Santo Tomas, now in the U.S. Virgin Islands, but then in the Danish West Indies. His important resides in his contribution to both Impressionism and Post-Impressionism. Pissarro studied from the great forerunners, including Gustave Courbet and Jean-Baptiste Camille Corot. He later studied and worked alongside Jacques Seurat and Paul Signac when he took on the neo-impressionist style at the age of 54. The material that Camille Pissarro used were oil paints that complement his landscape pastel water-based that help him paint inspiring image and sometimes use colors that help him paint the everyday landscape that he loved to paint. Next, please. Edgar Degas was a French impressionist artist famous for his pastel drawings and oil paintings. Degas also produced bronze sculptures, prints and drawings. Degas is especially in the feed with the subject of dance. More than half of his works depict dancers. All through, Degas is regarded as one of the founder of Impressionism. He rejected the term, preferring to be called a realist, and did not paint outdoors as many Impressionists did. Acknowledged as one of the finest draftsmen of his age, Degas experimented with a wide variety of media, including oil, pastel, gouache, etching, lithography, monotype, wax modeling, and photography. Next. Edouard Manet was French modernist painter. He was one of his 19th century artists to paint modern life as well as pivotal figure in the transition from realism to impressionism. Manet used heavier applications of oil paint on his main subject and thinner layers in the background and in less significant areas. This helped to direct the viewer's eyes to the more important parts of the painting. Next. Pierre Auguste Renoir was a French artist who was leading painter in the development of the Impressionist style. As a celebrator of beauty and especially feminine sensuality, it has been said that Renoir is the final representative of a tradition which runs directly from Rubens to Watteau. Renoir's color palette included vivid pigments including emerald green, combat blue, various bright yellows, seeing image above. vermilion, and red lakes in additional to iron oxide. Next. Post-Impressionism. Post-Impressionism is a predominantly French art movement that developed broadly between 1886 and 1905, which was from the last Impressionist exhibition up to the birth of Fauvism. The movement emerged as reaction against Impressionism and its concern for the naturalistic depiction of light and color. Post-Impressionists both extended Impressionism while rejecting its limitation. The artists continue using vivid color, a thick application of paint, and real-life subject matter, but were more inclined to emphasize geometric forms, distort from forms for an expressive effect, and use unnatural and seemingly random colors. Next, Jet.
Paul Gauguin Mahano no Atwa. During post-impression art, Nouveau or new art was going on. Philosophers, writers, and social leaders influenced the art by the limits they put on the countries. Technology and medicine were advancing during this time. This influenced the art by what was put into the paintings and drawings. Um, Eugene Henry Paul Gauguin was a post-impressionism painter from France. Gauguin's experimental use of color and synthetic style, which were unique from Impressionism, were not appreciated until after his death. He spent 10 years in French Polynesia near the end of his life. Next. Paul Cézanne Mont Saint Victor, 1904-16, Oil on Canvas, is his abstracts work highly influenced later modernist painter. In the 1870s, Cézanne adopted a style under the influence of Pissarro that had a bright palette, broken brushwork, and everyday subject matter of the Impressionism. Cézanne's goals to make impressionist art something solid and durable like an art in the museum, even lighting. Paul Cézanne was French painting and most Impressionism whose work established the groundwork for the transition from the 19th century vision of art- artistic endo- endeavor to a new and fundamental different world of art in the 10th. Next, George Seurat and Sunday afternoon on the island of the Grand Chate, 1884 to 1886. Post-Impressionism started in about 1880 when Impressionists started declining. Artists started using pointillism, which is the practice of applying small dots so that from a distance they blend together. During this time, there were advancements in medicine and studies of the nervous system. This probably influenced the art of this time. Post-Impressionists were influenced by Impressionists but did not like limits of it. Georges Ferrer was a post-impressionism painter from France. He invented the choro- chromoluminaris, chromoluminarism, and pointillism painting techniques, and he employed contact crayon for drawing on rose paper. Next, Henry Rousseau, The Dream 1910. Discovered by Picasso, no art training began. Painting at the age of 46, there is hope for only us. A folk artist, genius, magical, and enchanted world. Innocence like Gauguin preach. Henry Julian Felix Rousseau was a naive or primitive post-impressionism painter from France. He was also known as Le Dionnaire, a joking reference to his job as toll and tax collector. Next, Paul Signac. He was born on November 11, 1863 in Paris, France. He was an architect at the age of 18 before he became an artist. He was very good friend with Claude Monet and Georges Seurat. Paul Signac died on August 15, 1935. Paul Jules Signac was French neo-impressionism painter who helped establish the pointillist style alongside Georges Seurat. Next, Henri Matisse, Woman with a Hat, Madame Matisse, 1904 to 1905, San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. Henri Matisse was the most famous painter who used this style. He was a French painter who lived from 1869 to 1954. The top proposed photo was taken in 1933. His self-portrait was made using this style that he made famous. He was one of the best known artists of the 20th century. Henri Emile Benoit Matisse was a French painter who was noted for his use of color as well as his fluid and unique draughtsmanship. He was painter, draughtsman, printer, and sculptor, but is most known for his painting. Next reporter.
Fauvism. Fauvism is style of painting that flourished in France around the turn of 20th century. Fauve artists use pure, brilliant color aggressively applied straight from the paint tubes to create a sense of explosion on the canvas. Ang Fauvism daw ay isang kilusang artistikong lumitaw sa pagitan ng taon ng 1904 hanggang 1908 na nailalarawan sa pamamagitan ng paggamit ng purong kulay upang malimitahan o magbigay daming kaluwagan sa pananaw ng gawa. Next slide. André Derain. André Derain was a French artist, painter, sculptor, and co-founder of Fauvism. With Henri Matisse, one of the famous painters of the École de Paris, André Derain was a leading member of the short-lived colored movement known as Fauvism, along with the Henri Matisse, 1869 to 1984, and Maurice de Vlaminck, 1876-1958. He was one of the most important Fauvist painters. Si Henri Derain naman ay isang Pranses na pintor at sculptor. kasamang tagapagtatag ng Fauvism kasama si Henri Matisse. Next slide. Maurice de Vlaminck was a French painter, along with André Derain and Henri Matisse. He is considered of the principal figure in Fauve movement, a group of modern artists who from 1904 to 1908 were united in their use of intense color. Siya naman daw yung Prancer na pintor kasama sina André Derain at Henri Matisse. Siya yung tinuturing na isa sa mga pangunahing tauhan sa kilusang Fauve, isang grupo ng mga modernong artista mula 1904 hanggang 1908 ang nagkakaisa sa kanilang paggamit ng matingkad na kulay. Next slide. Edward Munch, under Impressionist, was a key forerunner of Expressionism movement, closely associated with symbolism and symbolized painting. He is best known for his image of anxiety, isolation, rejection, sensuality, and death of many, which reflected his neurotic and tragic life. Siya naman daw yung sa ideya ng dualism tulad ni ecstasy at hirap buhay siya yung na pagtutuwirang dapat tanggapin ng isang tao sa paghihirap bilang kanyang mahalagang bahagi. Pakikiisa para sa kagalakan dapat sumuko sa upang ganap na mabuhay ang kanyang buhay. Next slide. Ernest Ludwig Kirchner, under Impressionist, is under Expressionism, while the painting are based on the real world. Expressionists paint the scene if they had only giant at it for moment. Expressionism is directly focused on the emotional response to the artist to the real world, using this proportional size and angles of painted in vivid and intense colors. Was a German expressionist painter and one of the founder of the artist group Die Brook or the Bridge, a key group leading of the foundation of Expressionism in 20th century. Born on May 6, 1880 in the Germany, died on June 15, 1938. Next slide. Wassily Kandinsky, Expressionism. Objectives, abstract art as the idea visual made to express the inner necessity of artists and convey universal human emotions and ideas. He viewed himself as a prophet whose mission was to share this ideal with the world for the betterment of the society. Kandinsky was Russian painter in art theories. Kandinsky in the generally created as one of the pioneers of abstraction Western art, possibly after Hilma of Klink, born in Moscow. He spent his childhood in Odessa, where he graduated in Krakow Odessa Art School. Born on December 16, 1866 in Russia, died on December 30, 1944. Next reporter.
Expressionism. Expressionist, a painter, writer, or composer who is an exponent of Expressionism, seeking to express through their work the inner world of emotion rather than external reality. Franz Marc was a German printmaker and artist. He not only had an influence on art during his time, but was considered to be one of the key figures of the Expressionist movement in Germany. Following his time as well, he was born in Munich, Germany in 1880. He had an influence from his father. Although his career was cut short by his early death, Franz Marc had a tremendous impact on the various expressionist movement in the world evolved after World War One. After early experiments with naturalism and realism, Mark later eschewed those styles in favor of the greater symbolic potential of abstraction. He is most famous for his images of brightly colored animals, especially horses, which he used to convey profound messages about humanity, the natural world, and the fate of mankind. Next, Francis Bacon was born on January 22 of 1561 in London. He was the son of Sir Nicholas Bacon, keeper of the Great Seal for Elizabeth I. Bacon studied at Cambridge University and Gray's Inn and became a member of Parliament in 1584. Francis Bacon produced some of the most iconic images of wounded and traumatized humanity in post-war art, borrowing inspiration from surrealism, film photography, and the old masters. He forged a distinctive style that made him one of the most widely recognized exponent of figurative art in the 1940s and 1950s. Bacon concentrated his energies on portraiture, often depicting habitues of the bars and clubs of London's Soho neighborhood. His subjects were always portrayed as violently distorted, almost slabs of raw meat that are isolated souls imprisoned and tormented by existential dilemmas. One of the most successful British painters of the 20th century, Bacon's reputation was elevated further during the art world's widespread return to painting in the 1980s, and after his death, he became regarded by some as one of the world's most important painters. Affandi was an Indonesian artist born in May 18, 1907, died May 23, 1990. Born in Saiborn, West Java, as the son of R. Kosuema, who was a surveyor at a local sugar factory. Affandi finished his upper secondary school in Jakarta. He gave on his studies to pursue his desire to become an artist. Becoming in 1934, Affandi began teaching himself how to paint. In the 1950s, Affandi began to create expressionist paintings. The Pierce carrying the first grandchild, 1953, marked his newfound style known as squeezing the tube. Affandi painted by directly squeezing the paint out of its tube. He came across this technique by accident when he intended to draw a line one day, as he lost his patience when he was looking for a missing pencil. He applied the paint directly from its tube. The resulting effect, as he found out, was that the painted object appeared more alive. He also felt more freedom to express his feelings when he used his own hands instead of a paintbrush. In certain respects, he has acknowledged similarities with Vincent van Gogh. Paulo Picasso. Picasso's father began teaching him to draw and paint when he was a child, and by the time he was 13 years old, his skill level had surpassed his father's son. Picasso lost all desire to do any schoolwork, choosing to spend the school days doodling in his notebook instead. Under Cubism, as a significant influence on 20th century art, Pablo Picasso was an innovative artist who experimented and innovated during his 92 plus years on Earth. He was not only a master painter, but also a sculptor, printmaker, ceramic artist, etching artist, and writer. His work matured from the naturalism of his childhood through cubism, surrealism, and beyond, shaping the direction of modern and contemporary art. Through the decades, Picasso lived through the two world wars, sired four children, appeared in films, and wrote poetry. He died in 1973. George Braque. He grew up in the Le Havre and trained to be a house painter and decorator like his father and grandfather. However, he also studied serious painting in the evenings at the École Cles Biox Arts from about 1897 to 1899. Under Cubism, George Braque was at the forefront of the revolutionary art movement of Cubism. Braque works throughout his life focus on still lifes and means of viewing objects from various perspectives through color, line, and texture. While his collaboration with Pablo Picasso and their Cubist works are best known, Braque had a long painting career that continued well beyond that period. Cubism was one of the most influential styles of the 20th century. It is generally agreed to have begun around 1907 with Picasso's celebrated painting Demoiselles d'Avignon, which included elements of Cubist style. Cubism is an artistic movement created by Pablo Picasso and George Braque, which employs geometric shapes in depictions of human and other forms. Over time, the geometric touches grow so intense that they sometimes overtook the represented forms, creating a more pure level of visual abstraction. Next reporter.
Ledger, mga kahulugan ng ledger isang talaan kung saan naitala ang mga commercial na account kasing kahulugan, account, book, libro ng account ng ledger. Next. Marcel Duchamp sa buong Henry. Robert Marcel Duchamp ipinanganak noong Hulyo 28, 1887. Valley, France na namatay noong Oktubre 2, 1968. Francis na artista na sinira ang mga hangganan sa pagitan ng mga gawa ng sining at pang-araw-araw na mga bagay. Max Ernst. Si Max Ernst ay ipinanganak sa Bruchil, isang lugar malapit sa Cologne, sa Germany. Siya ay lumaki sa isang mahigpit na pamilya Katoliko at ang kanyang mga magulang ay parehong mga disiplinaryan na nakatuon sa pagsasanay ng kanilang mga anak sa mga taong may takot sa Diyos at may talento. Si Derechiko ay isang pioneer sa muling pagkabuhay ng klasismo na umunlad sa isang kababalaghan sa buong Europa noong 1920s. Ang kanyang sarili interes ay malamang na hinimok ng kanyang mga karanasan sa pagkabata nang pinalaki sa Greece ng mga magulang na Italiano. Frida Kahlo. Si Magdalena Carmen Frida Kahlo Calderon ay isang Maksiyan na pinto na kilala sa kanyang maraming mga portrait, self-portraits, at mga gawa na inspirasyon ng kalikasan at mga artifact ng Mexico. Next reporter.
Salvador Dali. Salvador Domingo Felipe Jacinto Dali. Domenic Marquez of Dali of Pubol was a Spanish surrealist artist renowned for his technical skill, precise draftsmanship, and the striking and bizarre images in his work. Born in Figueres, Catalonia, Spain, Dali received his formal education in fine arts in Madrid. After such a lengthy career, many iconic Salvador Dali works exist, as he was said to have produced over 1,500 paintings during his lifetime. His most famous painting is The Persistence of Memory, depicting limp melting watches. The materials he used are oil painting and bronze, with the Spanish director Luis Buñuel. Dali made two surrealistic films named Uncien Andalu and LH that are similarly filled with grotesque but highly suggestive images. Dali's major contribution to the surrealist movement was what he called the paranoid critical method, a mental exercise of assessing the subconscious to enhance artistic creativity. Next. René François Magritte. René François Ghislaine Magritte was a Belgian surrealist artist who became well known for creating a number of witty and thought-provoking images, often depicting ordinary objects in an unusual context. His work is known for challenging observers' preconditioned perceptions of reality. Surely the most celebrated Belgian artist of the 20th century, René Magritte has achieved great popular acclaim for his idiosyncratic approach to surrealism. René Magritte has 372 paintings in his lifetime. Magritte excelled in the depiction of mental images and created work that transformed reality and confused the viewer. In true surrealist form, alongside the likes of Dali, his paintings are never a mirror of the reality surrounding us. It is a mirror of the reality imagined by him. His famous artwork are The Treachery of Images, The Son of Man, The Human Condition, Golconda, and the Menace Assassin. Next. Moving on to abstract. Abstract art, also called non-objective art or non-representational art, painting, sculpture, or graphic art in which the portrayal of the things from the visible world play little or no part. All art consists largely of elements that can be called abstract, elements of form, color, line, tone, and texture. Next. Paul Jackson Pollock was an American painter and a major figure in abstract expressionist movement. He was widely noticed for his drip technique of pouring or splashing liquid household paint into horizontal surface, enabling him to view a paint his canvases from all angles. Pollock did not paint at all in 1956 after struggling with alcoholism for his entire adult life. Pollock, on August 11, 1956, at 10:15 p.m., died in a single car crash in his Oldsmobile convertible while driving under the influence of alcohol. He painted a total of 363 paintings in his short 44 years of life. Pollock's greatness lies in developing one of the most radical abstract styles in the history of modern art. Next, Mark Rothko, born Markus Yakovlevich Rothkowicz, was an American abstract painter of Latvian Jewish descent. He is best known for his color-filled paintings that depicted irregular and painterly rectangular regions of color, which he produced from 1949 to 1970. Rothko's goal was to capture the essence of basic human emotion on the canvas and then evoke those emotions from his viewers. Rothko's complete work on canvas, 832 paintings. His most famous painting is Orange, Red, Yellow. It's a 1961 colored field painting. On May 8, 2012, it was sold at Christie's from the estate of Davis Pincus for over $86 million, a record nominal price for post-war contemporary art public auction. Next. Pieter Cornelis Mondrian. After 1906, Piet Mondrian was a Dutch painter and art theoretician who is regarded as one of the greatest artists of the 20th century. Although he is the best known for his abstract paintings made from squares and rectangles, Piet Mondrian started out painting realistic scenes. He especially liked painting trees. Can you see the shape of the trees in his painting? It is shown how he began to develop his abstract style. His most famous painting is Broadway Boogie Woogie. The painting is considered the pinnacle of Mondrian's representation using his pictorial vocabulary of line, squares, and primary colors. Mondrian's development of neoplasticism became one of the key documents of abstract art. In the movement, he detailed his vision of artistic expression in which plasticism referred to the action of forms and colors on the surface of the canvas as a new method for representing modern reality. Next reporter.
Willem de Kooning was a Dutch-American abstract expressionist artist. He was born on April 24, 1904 on Rotterdam. Siya isang Dutch-American abstract expressionist artist o action painting ang ginagawa niyang art at pinanganak noong April 24, 1904 on Rotterdam. Next. Pop art. Popular art movement use common everyday objects, portray elements of popular culture, primarily image in advertising and television in the Western countries. Popular art movement gumagamit ng mga pang-araw-araw na bagay upang ipakita ang mga elements ng popular culture. Pangunahin ang mga larawan sa advertising at television sa kanlurang bansa. Originate in England in 1950s and traveled overseas to the United States during the 1960s, reflecting the affluence in post-war society. Nagmula ito sa England noong 1950s at naglakbay sa ibang bansa patungo sa United States noong 1960s at sumasalamin sa kasaganaan ng post-war society. Next. Andy Warhol was American artist, film director, and producer who leading figure in visual art movement known as pop art. Born on August 6, 1928. At ang mga nagawa niyang movies ay ang Blowjob, Salvador Dali, The Velvet. Next. Roy Lichtenstein was an American pop artist and painter who was founder and foremost practitioner of pop art, a movement that countered the techniques and concept of abstract expressionism with image and techniques taken from popular culture. Next. Richard Hamilton was an English painter and collage artist, born on February 24, 1922 on London, United Kingdom. Next. Jasper Johns is an American painter, sculptor, and printmaker whose work is associated with abstract expressionism. Born on May 15, 1930 in United States. Next. Kate Haring was an American artist whose pop art emerged from the New York City graffiti subculture of the 1980s. Born on May 4, 1958 in Pennsylvania, United States. That's all. Thank you.
Ito yung mga example ng mga artist. Impressionism, post-impressionism, Fauvism, expressionism, cubism, surrealism, abstract painting, and the last, pop art painting. That's all. Thank you.